Lesson 2.1 Church and Crown. Light streams through stained glass windows in the great church, inspiring worship. The ceilings seem to rise to heaven. It took decades and even centuries to construct cathedrals in the Middle Ages, some bigger than a king's castle. They were built for the greater glory of God, but they were also meant to inspire awe in the wealth and power of the church. Main idea. In the Middle Ages, the church controlled lives and challenged the authority of kings. The role of the church. It is hard for people today to understand the extraordinary power Christianity had in the Middle Ages. The Roman Catholic Church dominated people's lives from the cradle to the grave. It was the strongest unifying force in medieval Europe. The church baptized, married, pardoned, and buried everyone from serfs to kings. It promised that good people would go to heaven and the wicked would be punished after death. The religious leaders who oversaw these ceremonies and delivered the teachings formed the clergy. The Pope led this group, which included bishops and priests. While a priest was in charge of a single church, a bishop oversaw a group of churches. Bishops exercised their authority from towering churches called cathedrals, the skyscrapers of their day. Some Christians withdrew from medieval society to live in religious communities called monasteries. Monks, the people who lived in a monastery, spent much of their day praying, reading the Bible, and meditating. In addition, rulers and high-ranking clergy sometimes had monks make copies of ancient Greek and Roman texts. As a result, monks helped keep knowledge alive, and monasteries became centers of learning. Struggle for power. If anything, the power and wealth of the church began increasing in the 1000s, in part because it received free land from nobles. At the same time, however, kings began to regain their former authority. The king's return to power was largely because of the growth of towns and trade, which you will learn more about later. The king's rise weakened the feudal structure, but it also led to a power struggle between kings and the church. The struggle came to a head in 1075. The German king Henry IV was next in line to become Holy Roman Emperor. Like Charlemagne, the first Holy Roman Emperor, Henry ruled over a multi-ethnic group of territories in Central Europe, an empire that would continue until it dissolved in 1806. Henry had appointed his own priests to become bishops, but Pope Gregory VII claimed that these were religious appointments and should be his decision. The conflict raged until Gregory shut Henry out of the church, forcing the king to back down. Henry knew that if he did not, he would lose his throne. In those days, no one would have anything to do with a king who had been banished from the church. Gregory got his way and lifted the ban. He then regained full control of religious appointments. Lesson 2.2 King John and the Magna Carta. Here's a joke told by English school children. Where did King John sign the Magna Carta? At the bottom. Actually, he was in a meadow called Runnymede, and he didn't sign it. He placed his seal on it. And it was called the Articles of the Barons then. The barons, a group of noblemen, were not amused by the growing authority of the king. Main idea. The Magna Carta marked a major step toward democratic government in Western Europe. The Great Charter. In the last lesson, you read that kings were regaining their power. King John was one in a long line of powerful English kings that began in 1066. In that year, William, Duke of Normandy, a region in France, invaded England and established a strong centralized monarchy there. When John rose to the throne in 1199, he ruled England and half of present-day France. However, the king soon weakened his position by waging a series of failed, expensive wars. A group of local barons took advantage of John's decreased power to stage a rebellion. The barons believed that by raising their taxes, the king had violated common law. This was a system of law established in the 1100s that sought to ensure that people throughout England received equal treatment. So, in 1215, the barons forced John to place his seal on their document, which came to be known as the Magna Carta, or Great Charter. was meant to be just a contract between the king and his nobles. However, the Magna Carta made the king subject to the law of the land and limited his authority. A step toward democracy. Although the Magna Carta didn't benefit ordinary English people at the time, its guarantee of certain individual rights would have a great impact on the development of democracy. The document is recognized as the foundation of English law. A further step toward democracy, in the form of representative government, took place in 1258. Henry III, John's son, was King of England at the time. Like his father, he had angered a group of nobles. The nobles overruled Henry's authority and put together a council of 15 men to advise the king and limit his power. This group of representatives would become to be called Parliament. After King Henry died in 1272, his son Edward I rose to the throne. In 1295, Edward assembled what is considered the first truly representative parliament. The group included 2 knights from every county and 2 residents from each town. They passed laws, imposed taxes, and discussed political and judicial matters. From that point on, English kings would have to share their power, whether they liked it or not.